Okay, looks like we are here. Okay, so it looks like it's recording. A-okay. So, God, my ratings dropped so much. For the first time in history for me, my constructed ratings above my limited rating. So sad. Anyway, I guess I'm going to preface this with, I'm going to do a full Eternal Masters review. It's going to be one long video. So if you guys that are watching the YouTube mirror of this, see a long video, apologize. There's actually quite a few cards I kind of have to analyze. There's also no music running on the stream while I record this because I want to upload this to YouTube and not get it flagged. Okay, so I already have this open. We're going to go ahead and start this up. Now, this analysis and setup is going to be with a focus on using past limited formats to be able to correctly identify. I'm going to put it like this. There we go. To correctly identify and rate, so that way my logo at the bottom left doesn't get in the way. Since this is a full reprint set, we'll be able to use past information to try and guide future judgment. Now, of course, this is a radically different set. Trying to evaluate cards based on how they were in the past may be a futile task, but I still feel that there's some knowledge and information worth gathering. So, we are going to go ahead and see. Can I change this side so it's a little bit better? Ooh, that looks so much better. Yeah, so now we end up with just absent there on the left and unravel the madness. Let's set this up properly. Boop, boop, boop. Perfect. Now it looks somewhat better. Okay, so let's begin. In white, we have Aven Riftwatcher is the first card in the set. Originally printed in Time Spiral block. In Time Spiral was actually a very solid common, 3 mana, 2/3 flying, with Vanishing 3, aka it leaves the battlefield 3 turns later. Whenever it enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, you gain 2 life. Now, back in Time Spiral block, there weren't that many great flyers, which is why this card was actually a pretty powerful common at the time. Turns out the incidental gain 4 life and having a 2/3 flyer meant it oftentimes actually just straight up connected. For 3 mana, it almost always hit. And in addition, you had a lot of interaction going on with flicker effects. So you had cards like Momentary Blink, right, that would remove a creature and return it to the battlefield, which for this card resets the number of counters on it and gains you the 2 life and the 2 life when it returns. So that sort of combo was incredibly powerful, which is why the card was pretty highly valued. In this set, I don't think it's going to be nearly as good. However, it's still okay. Again, it's strongest if you have a way to reset the counters, and there aren't basically any ways to do that. Okay, next we have our first mythic of the set, Balance. If you are unfamiliar with Balance, the card is absolutely bonkers. So the card says, if you have no creatures, Plague Wind your opponent. If you have no cards in hand, after you cast Balance, Mind Twist your opponent's hand, etc., etc. The card is incredibly strong. It's strongest when you have, artifacts, right? So then you are playing cards, and Balance doesn't care about neither artifacts nor planeswalkers. So those cards typically make Balance much better, but Balance is just one of those total blowouts where you get like an aggro deck. You just don't play a creature for a couple of extra turns, then Balance, and you just get so much value. The card is incredibly strong, and I just expect it to be top tier. Ballinok Cohort is a reasonable card. 3 mana, 2/2 first strike, which can be a 3/3 first strike if you control another white creature. Definitely something that is a consideration for something you want to play if you are in a white deck. It's perfectly curve filling. It's not absurdly great, but it's certainly one of the cards that I will be okay playing. Benevolent Bodyguard, 1 mana, 1/1. Sack it, give a creature pro color of your choice. Is okay. Like, I have never been incredibly impressed with it. it was like okay when it was printed in the past, and it protects your creature from a removal spell. So it's I'm not a huge fan of 1-mana 1/1s, but this is the type of effect that makes me kind of okay playing it. Next we have Calciderm. Now Calciderm, again, same block as Aven Riftwatcher. 4 mana, 5/5, Shroud, and Vanishing 4. Basically, playing this on turn 4 is huge, just because oftentimes it will be able to attack. It's impossible to deal with. There's no way for you to really reset it since it also has Shroud. So basically, Calciderm is the type of card that my experience has been that it can be absurd, just because, especially in this format, a 4 mana 5/5 will really punch people in the face really hard, really aggressively. So if you're a decent aggressive deck, this is exactly what you want. And at worst, they like chump block with a couple of creatures, and you get some value from it. So Calciderm, very playable from the past. Now, Coalition Honor Guard is the first and only flag bearer we have in the set. Flag bearers had some impact where they all have the same effect. When choosing targets as part of casting a spell or activating an ability, they must choose at least one flag bearer if able. Now, this one wasn't the best one accessible because 4 mana is actually a relevant amount for you to invest. There were some 2 mana flag bearers that were very strong. However, the effect is incredibly powerful, and people don't seem to realize it. Basically, anytime you have anything that's alongside the Honor Guard, they have to just target the Honor Guard first. And it's important to know that it's casting a spell or activating an ability. So pingers are shut down. I think the card's like okay. It's not as absurd as some of the other Honor Guards, but the flag bearers can really get out of control sometimes. 8.5 Tails, very solid white rare. It's cube playable for a reason. Basically, once you have a ton of white mana accessible, you get to give all your creatures protection from whatever you want. You can make creatures white or spells white, which oftentimes is pretty sweet. So if you ever play 8.5 Tails on turn 2 and they don't kill it right away, you're very favored because you already have double white and probably hit your 3rd land drop. So for 3 mana, you can protect your next creature. Elite Vanguard. So in the past, right, 1 mana 2/1s are not the type of card you want to play. See, like the Ally in Battle for Zendikar, right? Now, does there exist a white aggro deck in this format? I don't think enough. In constructed, 1 mana 2/1s is what you're looking for an appropriate rate. But for limited, I don't expect Elite Vanguard to be superb, given it is at common. If I recall correctly, Elite Vanguard was an uncommon, got downgraded. So you'll be seeing a lot more of these. So maybe they tried to push the white archetype by having Elite Vanguard on 1. I don't know. I've noticed that there's a lot of 2 power, 2 toughness creatures running around this format. Enlightened Tutor is one of those cards that if you have a great artifact or enchantment to get, it's probably worth playing, otherwise don't. Face Fetters has gotten the bump up from original Ravnica to uncommon. 4 mana, basically what it does is it's can't attack, can't block, and activated abilities can't be activated, so basically like Arrest, but you also gain 4 life and you enchant a permanent. So you can enchant, some of the cases are like Planeswalkers, for example, or artifacts, if artifacts don't make mana, right? Because it doesn't stop mana abilities, right? Otherwise, this thing would be Stone Rain, right? Because you would enchant a land. By the way, don't enchant a land unless the land has a non-mana ability. Field of Souls is one of those cards that I'm not terribly I'm curious to see where it fits in this particular format. Because any type of creature dies, you put a 1/1 spirit. Now, it's important to note, it's only on your side of the battlefield, right? It's put into your graveyard from the battlefield. However, if you have a whole bunch of, Elite Vanguard style effects, right? You could end up with a pretty sizable flying force. There are a lot of blue and white flyers running around. That is the archetype. It's blue-white skies. So maybe this goes in there as a way to, add some longevity. Initially, my gun is it's okay. Not terrible, but not superb. We'll see if I'm incorrect on this one. I don't have as much familiarity with it, so I can't judge it as well. Glimmer Point Stag, originally printed in Scars of Mirrodin. 4 mana, 3/3 Vigilance. That exiles a permanent and returns it to the battlefield. AKA, this is the exact type of card you want with cards like Aven Riftwatcher, right? Resets it. It's already an efficient body. 4 mana, 3/3 with Vigilance. Is, it's Hill Giant, right? And sometimes you can do some fun shenanigans. Like, you can exile a creature that's been enchanted. You can do a lot of work with Glimmer Point Stag, and I've actually been very impressed with it in the past. So I think this card's it's stayed uncommon for a reason. I think it's actually quite playable. Okay, now on to Honden of Cleansing Fire. So I've been asked multiple times about the Hondens, the shrines, which are a set of 5 enchantments, 1 of each color, because they did not include the 5 color one. That at the beginning of your upkeep, you get an effect based on each shrine you control. Now, I am prone to liking the white, the blue, and the black ones. I have been not terribly impressed with the red one, though the red one can be definitely sideboardable against lots of decks with 1 toughness creatures, because it deals damage equal to the number of shrines you control. Now, I don't think you should be forcing 5 color shrines in this format, especially one, they're uncommon, so you're not expected to see that many, though. And it's important to know that the very top tier shrines, aka I think the blue, the black, and the white, and maybe the red. You can make the argument for red. You'll see that they'll be snapped up by just a good blue control deck or a good black control deck. They fit best, of course, obviously in a control shell. Honden of Cleansing Fire is one of those cards that I've been incredibly impressed by. It seems very underwhelming, gaining 2 life or 4 life a turn, but it actually can really, really stall out some decks. It's not amazing, it's not slam first pick by any stretch of the imagination, but it's one of those cards that if you see and you're a white control deck, it's something worth considering. Humble, well, it's basically Turn to Frog, except it makes it a 0/1. Now, it's not straight up removal, because it doesn't kill a creature, but it can be pretty powerful. This is one of those instances that you really have to think and play around. I would play a copy or 2 if I'm, probably not 2 copies, but at least 1 copy if I end up in white. I don't think there are nearly enough tokens to justify intangible virtue in this format, so I'm just going to move on. Jareth Leonin Titan. 6 mana, 4/7, triple white, and whenever it blocks, it gets +7/+7, and you get protection from the color of your choice. This is one of those cards that is a very strong rare. You pick it up if you are able to play heavy white. It's a card that demands an answer, because it can be a 4 power unblockable, or it just says, you can't attack. You just straight up can't attack. And if you ever get to untap with it, or have an extra white up, giving it protection from a removal spell is huge. Next we have Karmic Guide, 5 mana, 2/2 flyer, pro black, again with Echo. Well, not again with it, this is the first card with Echo. So if it came into play, you have to sacrifice it unless you pay the Echo cost. And when it enters the battlefield, you return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. This can be a very powerful effect. It is stronger in Cube, where you have just very, very good creatures. But even still, Karmic Guide getting back a 2/2 or a 3/3 might be enough to justify it. Now, it's important to know that if you ever flicker Karmic Guide with, say, Glimmer Point Stag, you have to repay the Echo costs, so keep that in mind. Next, you have Core Hookmaster. So, 3 mana, 2/2. Okay, so, weak there. But when it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap. This is the same sort of effect we've seen on Frostlinks, and the card is very strong. I expect it to be pretty good as a common, as one of the better tempo white cards. If you're in an aggro deck, this is exactly what you want. You just tap their blocker, get an attack in, and then they don't untap for an extra turn. So it's very, very powerful, and I think it is something that is very strong. Mesa Enchantress gets the downgrade to uncommon. Whenever you cast an enchantment, you may draw a card. This goes in 1 deck, the green-white enchantment deck. If you're in the green-white enchantment deck, you might as well pick it up. Not super aggressively, mind you, but it's the card you'd want to play. Mistral Charger is our Welkin turn of the set. So it's a 2 mana, 2/1 flyer. Not a bad card. It's a type of card that I'll be happy to play, It's very aggressively costed, and if again there are a fair number of flyers, so this card isn't as absurd as you would think it would be. But it's still just like a very solid card. There's lots of things you can do with it, and it's almost surely goes into most white decks and definitely the blue-white skies deck. Monk Idealist, pretty subpar. Returning an enchantment from your graveyard to your hand is an effect that we've seen in the past, and it's just on a 3-mana 2/2. Most times, if you're playing an enchantment, it'll stay in play. So, this card is probably going to be relegated to most sideboards of most decks. You might put one copy if you're in green-white and you desperately need it. Next, we have Mother of Runes, aka Mom. If you have never had the opportunity to play with Mom in a limited format, let me tell you, she's absurd. You play her, if you untap, Mom takes over the game. Just straight up. It warps the entire landscape and fabric of everything you want to do if you're against this card. And if you have this card, basically, Mom lets you either block with impunity, protect your creatures, or give a creature pseudo unblockable for a color, right? So it lets you just, again, warp combat, and Mom is absurd. And so if you open her, I would strongly recommend playing her. She's very good. Next we have Pacifism. Pacifism is great. It's super solid removal, and Pacifism is always great. Just always has been. Next we have Raise the Alarm. Does not seem that good in this format. There are a lot of 2-power, 2-toughness creatures running around. So this is not a format where I think Raise the Alarm is great. Now you can see that there exists a great number of, like, there's some like token sub-theme. So you see like Raise the Alarm and Intangible Virtue. You'll see Rally the Peasants right here, but there's not enough to justify it. Like, I would take Raise the Alarm if I open like Subdual Glare, or what is it? There's a green-white enchantment. We'll hit it when we get to it. That says tap a creature. Tap a creature you control, tap another creature. Very strong in that sense. But other than that, like, if you're not something that really wants tokens, I would not play Raise the Alarm just as 2 mana for 2/1/1s. Not in this format. Rally the Peasants. This is a card that is a bit of a pet card for me, just because it was really strong in original Innistrad for me. But it's a very good, aggressive, red-white aggro finisher card. Think of it like you'll play one copy, preferably in red-white, not just in white. But it's a great way to punch in that last amount of damage, especially if you have like tokens. Seal of Cleansing, sideboard to deal with troublesome artifacts and/or enchantments. Second Thoughts is very expensive for removal. 5 mana, exile target attacking creature and draw a card. Probably too expensive, honestly. Like, you could play one copy and you're probably okay, just because there's so many good creatures. But exiling an attacking creature is just like 5 mana, and then it costs 5, so you have to leave up 5 mana for them to attack. So it can be one of those cards that you could be like, oh, my opponent just passed and didn't play a spell. You might want to keep that in mind. Next we have Serra Angel. This is a type of format where I think Serra Angel is going to be playable but not absurd. It's a 5 mana 4/4 flying and vigilance is very, very efficient for limited. So like if you see an Serra Angel, you probably want to snap it up and play and kill them with it. It's one of the biggest things in the air, and it is very good. I don't want to undersell Serra Angel, right? I've just been doing 10th edition drafts where Serra Angel is super mega ultra unbeatable, and here it's still like very good and definitely a card you want to play. Shelter is one of those cards that I have not been impressed with, given it is a playable card. I like it more in sideboards against very aggressive or like very removal filled decks. It's important to note you can always like if one of your creatures is enchanted, you can shelter it to make the enchantment fall off, and it at worst cycles. So the lower end of shelter isn't like absurdly bad. So you could play a copy and you're probably okay. You shouldn't play more than one copy though, in my opinion. Unless of course you're against like mono removal. Soul Catcher. So this is one of those build around blue-white Flyers cards. It's a 2-mana 1/1 flyer, so right there it's kind of small. But whenever a creature with flying dies, put a counter on it, a +1/+1 counter. This is one of those cards that if you're in blue-white flyers, you probably want to snap it up kind of early. Probably not before like 5th pick, probably. But if all your creatures have flying, then this card can get out of hand. If you get 2 creatures with flying to die and you have a 2-mana 3/3 flyer, you're already way above the curve. So, card's pretty solid. So speaking of, I imagine I'm going to get a fair amount of hate for this one. Squadron Hawk. Now, Squadron Hawk is one of those cards that was printed in a core set and was not picked up early. Why? Because a 2-mana 1/1 flyer is not good, even if it gets you more 1/1 flyers. Now, you can have some sort of shenanigans going on with Squadron Hawks, with like Rally the Peasants or Soul Catcher, etc. Like you can have something that really works well with it. And I guarantee you, especially the people that are not familiar with how Squadron Hawk was in Limited, will be taking it too aggressively. So keep that in mind. Like Squadron Hawk at the time of the core set it was in, which I believe was M10 or M11, one of those two. Squadron Hawk was like a 9th, 10th pick. Like you'd pick up a couple copies, you'd be like, oh look, I have some Squadron Hawks, ha 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 ha. But you wouldn't really like go all in on it. It's only, now that people associate it with Caw-Blade, they're going to think it's better than it was. Speaking about cards that are better than they were, no, I'm kidding. Swords of Plowshares is just absurd. It's easily first pickable if there's not like a bomb in the format, a 1-mana removal spell, unconditional removal. There's a reason this card gets played in Legacy and Vintage and just every format that it's legal in, and Cube, it's top tier. The card's just absurd. Very strong. Now, Unexpectedly Absent is one of those cards that is more powerful if there are lots of shuffle effects that exist in the format. Now, there doesn't exist a lot of exile effects in this format, so Unexpectedly Absent is actually like a pretty subpar removal spell. Even in Cube, where they do exist a fair number of shuffle effects, even then it's probably not even good. So I would not rate this very high. Like this is like a delaying sort of tactic. It's not like Condemn, which puts it on the bottom. It's very much a tempo effect, right? You are delaying the inevitable to put it on top. So much like Oust, right? Oust was just 1 mana for it. So you have to make the use out of the time you give it. So the card is like playable. You like if I'm in white, especially like a white Flyers deck, I probably will play Unexpectedly Absent. But don't like first pick it over like Swords of Plowshares or anything like that. Like let's not get crazy here. I'd probably take Pacifism over Unexpectedly Absent. Next you have Wall of Moment, incredibly solid card, 2 mana, blocker on the ground and cycles. Great. Blocks everything on the ground for the first few turns, which is exactly what you want in a nice control deck, and card's super solid. You'll be happy every time you play Wall of Moment. War Priest of Thune is a pretty solid sideboard card. There are a fair number of enchantments that exist in this format, and so picking up a copy for your sideboard is a good thing. Welkin Guide. Welkin Guide is one of those cards that it's either absurd or just terrible. Like, assume you have no creatures in play. You play it, and you now paid 5 mana for a 2/2 flyer. That is not an effective rate. I've not been impressed with Welkin Guide, and I don't think it's good enough for this format, period. I'm just going to say it up front. I think it's terrible. White Mainline, another card from Times Battle Block. It's 2 mana, 2/2 with Flash. So, a Flash Bear, just with that, seems alright. Now, when it enters the battlefield, you're required, this is not a may, return a creature you control to its owner's hand. So you will never play White Mainline on turn 2, unless you just want to bounce it back to your hand if you didn't play a 1-drop. However, White Mainline has some good interactions with cards like Aven Riftwatcher, the Echo guy that gives you I'm very tired with names. A Karmic Guide, there we go. Any of these sort of enter the battlefield effects, or any of these effects that make it disappear after some amount of time, this is exactly why you want White Mane Lion. So if you have a ton of enter the battlefield effects, it's great. It also is pretty decent against, or for protecting your creatures. They target it with a removal spell, you bounce it back to your hand in response. It's been enchanted with a pacifism, you bounce it back to your hand at some point. Like, you can get a fair amount of value with White Mane Lion, and having a copy in a white deck is completely reasonable, I think. Now we have Wrath of God. I mean, Wrath effects are great in Limited, especially 4-mana Wraths. The cheaper they are, the more you're able to guide the setup where they overcommit to the board one turn, you Wrath of God, and you just got, 3 for 1 them. You're up a ton of cards, and it's very, very powerful. Wrath of God's just super strong, and I'll be happy to pick it up every time. Okay, 25 minutes for white. It's going to be a long video. On to Arcanus the Omnipotent. It costs a lot of blue mana, but if you ever untap with Arcanus, you are probably just straight up winning the game. The ability to tap and draw 3 cards and protect Arcanus with 4 mana means Arcanus is one of those bomb rares that's like, I play this. Do you have an answer? No? Okay, I win. GG. Brainstorm at uncommon. Now, the thing is, like, people are like, oh my god, Brainstorm, it's so good in Legacy, and they're going to play it in this deck. Again, what makes Brainstorm good is shuffle effects. And those almost surely don't exist in this format. So Brainstorm is not like slam first pick, like I would take Ponder, Preordain, any of those like higher than Brainstorm in a limited format where they don't exist shuffle effects. Because basically what you're saying is like, okay, you take your 3 cards, you put them back, and you know you're going to draw the same cards, right? So if you have a bad card, you don't get rid of it, which is the power of Brainstorm plus shuffle. So I'll play a copy of my blue deck if I really need one, but it's not great. Cephalid Stage is pretty weak. It's a 4-mana 2/3, so very, very weak in that stuff. And when it enters the battlefield, if you have Threshold, you draw 3, then discard 2. Which that effect isn't bad, but it's basically a lot of work to be able to get something that draws you a card. It will draw you the best card of 3, but it's still not great. However, Control Magic, kind of absurd. Just absolutely bonkers. It's been upped from uncommon to rare for a reason. The card is amazing. I love me my Control Magic. I just love it. It was my favorite card to first pick early on in core sets, and the card's just absurd. Absurd. It's the easiest 2-for-1 you'll ever have. So one of my mods in chat is psyched that we have Counterspell at common. And I'm actually just going to tackle... Well, so Counterspell is actually, like... Having it at common is actually not irrelevant. As opposed... Well, so Mana Leak was as close to Counterspell we got in a while, but having straight-up Counterspell can be an incredibly powerful effect. If there exists a blue control deck, it's going to have a few copies of Counterspell. And it's so hard to play against because it's just straight up counter target spell. It's not conditional, and sometimes you just have to run into it. Now on to Daze. Now, Daze is one of those cards where you will either get absolutely completely blown out by it, or it will do actual nothing. And it's a very, very wide range. I have been on the receiving end of many Dazes and Force Spikes and Mana Tithes, and every time it's like, oh, okay, you got me. But I don't think Daze is that playable in Limited. I'll just say it. So I did. Deep Analysis at common. So it is a pseudo divination with flashback. having a copy is pretty strong. It's actually a very strong draw spell, and I'm normally happy to play one copy in my limited decks. The danger of playing multiple copies of Deep Analysis is that flashback cost of paying 3 life does hurt if you don't have some way to recover from it. That's important to keep in mind. Next, we have Diminishing Returns. This is one of those cards where I think it's just printed for legacy people that want reprints. It's a time twister of effects, right? Like if you have the way you get your most amount of value from diminishing returns is you have played more cards than your opponent, and then you draw more cards. Now, I'm not going to say that diminishing returns is terrible. I just say there exists the deck for it. I just wouldn't first pick it if there's like a good removal spell. Dream Twist is bad. Please don't play it. I don't think the self-mill or the mill opponent archetype exists in this format, so don't play it. Oh my god, Fact or Fiction! Okay, so let's get something straight. I first picked Fact or Fiction in powered cubes before. So that should say how incredibly strong this card is. Please, take Fact or Fiction, crush people with it every time. It is absurd and just amazing, and I love this card too much for my own good, but EOTFOF YL, if you don't know what that acronym stands for, it's end of turn, Fact or Fiction, you lose, because yes, this is an instant, and yes, you can cast it at the end of your opponent's turn, and leave up, say, counter spell. It's beautiful. I have to imagine I don't have to say much about Force of Will. If you open a Force of Will, you're almost surely going to take it, just for value reasons. In terms for limited, Force of Will is okay. Like, the edge you get in Force of Will because you are functionally paying 2 cards for their 1 card. So you need to have an edge to make Force of Will better. And the edge you get with Force of Will is, let's suppose you play a good 5-drop, and then they try to play a good 5-drop, and you Force of Will it, and then you play a good 6-drop. That sort of progression of you playing 11 mana worth of incredibly strong spells and dealing with their 5 mana answer tends to put the initiative on your opponent to have to be forced to answer that, which oftentimes is hard to do in a limited format. Okay, on to Future Sight. Future Sight is, if you're in a good control deck, it's not the worst thing to play. I would be okay being, playing Future Sight in a heavy blue deck. Card can be very strong. Like it can let you draw an extra card a turn, or like play an extra land and do a lot of work. Card is strong. It's probably worth building around. Gaseous Form. So Gaseous Form originally printed, I believe, in Innistrad. If I'm not, or like last printed in Innistrad, if I recall correctly. I might be off here. Innistrad block. Basically, it turns their creature into, they can't attack, but they'll block with it for free. This sort of effect in the past for limited is playable, not amazing. The ability to block for free means your biggest creature will always be blocked. That's it. Next, we have the Giant Tortoise. It's a 2-mana 1/4. Sweet. It blocks the ground very well. You probably won't be attacking with it that much, since it only gets +0/+3 as long as it's untapped. But, Giant Tortoise is one of those very good control cards that you just need to play early in the game to keep you alive. Next, you have Glacial Wall. It's a 3-mana 0/7 with Defender. Speaking of dirtily cards, if you want the ground gummed up, you play the wall from Okay, chat's saying that gaseous form has been in Legends and the Dark. Thank you, chat. This is why chat is smarter than me sometimes. Anyway, so Glacial Wall, very bad against the Blue-White Flyers deck, just as an FYI. But if you want to sit and dirtle, which the cards exist. Hey, Usman the Rad, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the stream. I'm Taro Dances. You'll be forever immortalized when I upload this to YouTube. Glacial Wall is one of those cards that I have no qualms playing, just because I'm the type of blue dirtly player that enjoys having a giant blocker. And so it's not unplayable, but you should probably not play more than one copy. Like, this thing doesn't kill people. It just makes sure you don't die. So, Haunted and Obscene Winds is what I think is the best of the shrines, in my opinion, though black gets close. Depending on the type of deck you want, you either want the black or the blue one. I mean, this says at the beginning of your upkeep, draw an extra card. Very slow. Very slow. You should... But depending on the speed of this format, which this format does not seem incredibly fast, it seems pretty dirtily, actually. So it seems like this would be the type of format where having a Haunted, even just Haunted of Seeing Winds in a blue deck is not an unreasonable effect. Hydro Blast with sweet art, strictly sideboard. If it's red, great, and you have a free counter spell, free removal spell if they're in red. Move on. Now, Inkwell Leviathan. It is one of those cards that if you have it in play, they are most likely just straight up dead. There are a few ways to cheat this card into play, though. There's not that many. Basically, the blue-black reanimate strategy that exists is if you can, most of the best targets to reanimate exist in the form of Inkwell Leviathan or World Gorger Dragger, that sort of thing, right? If you have Animate Deads and Torrents, I totally forgot the black-red spell that reanimates, that's the sort of effect that goes great. Like, don't expect to have 9 mana in limited much. Just don't. It's not a hard thing. Tinker does not exist in this format, unfortunately. Do I need to say anything about Jace? I mean, it's so hard. Jace is stupid. If you open a Jace, you look at the Jace, you smile, slam it down in front of you, and, try to play blue. Jace is absurd. Like, you first pick it in lots of cubes, or at least, I know a fair number of people that just absolutely slam Jace, and this is a weaker format than a cube, so I would happily take Jace every time. Every time. Jetting Glasskite. So it's a 6-mana 4/4 flyer. So, efficiency-wise, a 4/4 flyer for 6 isn't the worst in the world. And then the ability of, when it becomes a target of a spell ability for the first time, counter it. So, there are some ways to get around it, right? They'll target it with some irrelevant effect and then play, a Pacifism or a Swords of Plowshares or something like that. But that takes some workaround. I'm normally okay playing one copy of this card at the top of my curve, especially if I'm in in a blue flyers deck or even just a blue control deck. This card does demand an answer, and I'm actually a pretty big fan of it. Not enough to play more than one copy, just because 6 mana is a lot, right? You need to get yourself there, and playing multiple copies is a little bit stressful, I would think. Oh my god, Mana War! Sorry. Much like Marshall Sutcliffe, I love Mana War, Ether Adept, all of those sort of, when it comes into play, return a creature. It is just straight up beautiful and amazing. It's that common, and oh my god, I'm so happy. I love Mana War. Card is super solid. If you're in a blue deck, you just play Mana War. It doesn't matter what type of blue deck. I would play Mana War in basically all of them. It is best... its best form is in these sort of tempo decks where you play a relevant threat, then you Mana War their answer to their threat, and then get some damage in. You play another Mana War, and it's so great. Anyway, Mana Wars just get better in multiples to an extent, right? You don't want to play 18 Mana Wars. I would try to play 18 Mana Wars because I'm that terrible a person. So memory lapse is straight up tempo, right? It counters a spell, but it puts it on top of the library. Unlike Remand, this does not draw you a card. It's not draw you a card. Oh, people are asking what pick Mana War. I would say Mana War is like 3rd to 6th pick, probably. At least that's probably where I'd pick it up. It's probably closer to like 3 to 5 than 3 to 6. But the card is like incredibly good. I think. I've been very impressed with Mana War. Now this is, Eternal Masters. This is a format where it looks like it is. I mean, much like Modern Masters, right? These sort of formats where the power level of individual cards is so high that some of these limited all-stars might go down a little bit based on the relative power. Anyway, I'm not a fan of Memory Lapse. It is, again, pure tempo, and I'd rather just play Counterspell, personally. Counterspell does have that restriction of double blue. That is a thing. But I'm not a huge fan. I'll probably play a copy if I need to in a very hard control deck where I just need time, but that's basically all you're playing for. Is you're playing it on turn 2. You want to counter something on turn 2 to give yourself time. So Merfolk Looter getting bumped up to uncommon. One of the best uncommons you can have if you're in Reanimate. But it's also just an absurd uncommon. Having a 2-mana creature that draws and discards a card is a very strong effect. And definitely a card that I was doing 10th edition drafts and was going 10th pick, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Merfolk Looter is absurd. And it is absurd. The card is very strong. If you're in blue, definitely look at Merfolk Looter and just be super happy if you get one. So, Mystical Tutor. So, Enlightened Tutor, you have a lot of very good targets, right? You've got Pacifism, you've got I just totally blanked on Fate's Fetters. There we go. So there's there are a fair number of very good enchantments that you can pick up with Enlightened Tutor. Now for Mystical Tutor, there do exist some instants or sorceries like having an answer. Now, Mystical Tutor, if you're specifically I would say in Reanimate, for example, right? And you need to find one of the Reanimate spells. Cough, cough, not Animate Dead. This is the sort of thing you probably are going to want, but if there's a good removal spell, I'm probably going to take it over Mystical Tutor, to be 100% honest. In Limited, this card is less good than in Constructed. Because in Constructed, specifically in Vintage, where you have one-ofs, Mystical Tutor is less good. So we have Una's Grace. Now this is one of those cards where it looks so subtle. It's 3 mana, instant, target player draws a card. Retrace. Retrace being the effect of you can cast this card by discarding a land and paying the mana. Una's Grace is a card I love having one copy of. Why? It is the ultimate flood protection. The cost of playing it in your deck is not that big. It is an instant 3 mana cycle. But if you get to late in the game and you just get to start retracing Una's Grace, you get so much value from it. So the cost of it is very low, and the ceiling of it is very high. So I would not play more than one copy. I don't think playing 2 copies is that great, especially where there exists some pretty decent draw spells in this format. Deep Analysis, for example, also at common. But having one copy, especially with look at how control-y blue looks. There's a blue-white Flyers deck that exists, and then blue-black Reanimate, but the rest of blue is pretty strong on the control front. Next you have Peregrine Drake. It is a quote-unquote free 2/3 flyer. Now, oddly enough, the stats of Peregrine Drake seem very good in this format. There are not a lot of 3+ power flyers. There's a lot of 2/2 flyers, and once you get beyond 2 power flyers, they're 4/4 Sarah Angels, right? Now the question is, the gain is you're paying 5 mana for a 2/3 flyer, right? It's not 5 mana for a 3/3 flyer, which that power is actually quite relevant. So you lose that, but it's quote unquote free. You untap 5 lands. So your edge is if you play a Peregrine Drake and another 5-drop, you just played 10 mana worth of spells. That can be something that can really tip the scales, much like I mentioned with Force of Will, right? Force of Will is great if you go 5-drop. They try and play 5-drop. You Force of Will it, and you go 6-drop, right? 2 big threats. And theirs was dealt with. At the cost of cards, yes. This one's lost. It's not terrible, but my gut instinct is that Peregrine Drake isn't that good in this format, but I probably will end up playing a copy if I end up in like a blue-white Flyers deck, just because its ceiling isn't high, but its floor isn't terrible. Phantom Monster is very solid in this format. I'm just straight up saying it. 4 mana, 3/3 flyer. Great. As I said, there's a lot of 2/3 flyers, and then there's a jump when you start getting to 4/4 flyers. Phantom Monster is a very solid way to kill people really quick. Like, we're used to our 5 mana, 3/3 flyers with some upside, maybe, but Phantom Monster is very solid. And I'm very content to pick this card up. Now, Phyrexian Jester, downgraded from rare. 7 mana is a lot. Do not play more than one copy of this. This is your budget answer. This is one of the few uncommons that exists that's very good in the reanimate strategy. Because you reanimate Phyrexian Jester, and you exile an opponent's creature, and you get, if it's their biggest creature, it's probably a 3/3 or bigger, so you end up with a 6/6. That is not bad. It's a duplicate style effect, and yes, I know duplicate is in this format, but Phyrexian Jester is one of those cards that I loved playing it in Limited before, and picking up a copy. If you're in a slow, dirtily blue deck, I'll probably play one copy, but again, playing multiples is you're in some dangerous ground there. Again, the decks may exist, right? This is a format that seems it's more subtly synergistic than you would think. There's some obvious synergies, obviously. English is hard sometimes. Moving on, Prodigal Sorcerer, 3 mana, taps, deals 1 damage. I'll play it. I mean, it's not bad. There are very few X1s running around, so it won't be killing everything under the sun. But it is a 3 mana card that when you play it, you tend to be pretty happy with it, especially on the battlefield. It got upped from. I know there was the red version that was at common, so same sort of thing. Prodigal Sorcerer, Tim, right? He lost the hat and he lost the beard, but still pretty solid. Quiet Speculation. This fits in one deck and one deck by itself. If you have the Burning Vengeance deck, the blue-red spells deck, and you have a lot of spells with flashback, of which, it's important to note, what blue spells have we seen with flashback? Just Dream Twist and Deep Analysis, which you don't want to have too many Deep Anals in your deck. It's probably bad for you. So, keep that in mind. Quiet Speculation only goes into that deck. Screeching Scab, not a fan, to be honest. You would play it in Innistrad, or I believe this was in Dark Ascension, because you just needed a 2 mana 2 power guy in that format to face all the werewolves. And the downside was oftentimes not the worst downside in the world, because sometimes you play Self-Mill. But this does not seem like a format that you are required to play a 2 mana 2 power guy, so I would err away from Screeching Scab. Oh, Serendipity. This is a card that's gone from absurd to pretty subpar. Now this is a format where I think Serendipity doesn't seem like the worst. 3 mana, 3/4. One, the fact it comes down on turn 3 and can smash for a bunch is really relevant. And as I said, there's a lot of 2/3 flyers, so having the 3 power is pretty big to get you in early. Now it does, if it faces down a Sarah Angel, it's sad, but it's important to note Serendipity is one of those cards that goes great with Mana War, right? Where you play a Serendipity, they play a flyer, and then you bounce their guy, get in, right? And now you have a Serendipity. You have to play Serendipity and see the drawback is, If they put a pacifism on it, you're going to be sad. Here comes Jinae. I hope I pronounced your name right. Welcome to the stream. Thank you very much for following Hamtaro Dances, and I welcome you. My alerts has actually been kind of buggy lately, so it's not seeing the full name, but thank you guys for watching, or thank you for the follow. Appreciate it a lot. Moving on to Shoreline Ranger. Shoreline Ranger, playable card. It's oftentimes island cycled more than you would think, but in the late game, like, this card has a dual purpose, right? In the early game, if you need a land, you just island cycle Shoreline Ranger, guaranteed to hit your 3rd or 4th land drop if you really need it. And in the late game, if you already have all your lands, you're like, okay, I'll just play a 3/4 flyer. Much like Serendipity Strength comes out on turn 3. Shoreline Ranger comes down a decent amount later, but it's still, like, very playable. Not amazing, but playable. Now, Silent Departure. Silent Departure is a card from original Innistrad that was probably wasn't the best blue common of the set. Some people argue Claustrophobia is better, and I think they're true. But Silent Departure is a very close second. So it's an unsummon at sorcery speed. Okay, that is playable. Not amazing, but playable. And then it has a flashback, so you get to have 2 unsummons. The tempo gain from this card is very strong, and I love having 2 to 3 copies in my blue decks. Again, early game, you get to bounce their guys. Late game, you just get more value with it. Of course, this card is one of the premier cards to play in the Burning Vengeance deck, because flashback. But Silent Departure is, at least it was very strong. We'll see how it fits in here. I think this is a format that Silent Departure will continue to shine in. Oh, Sprite Noble. Sprite Noble crushed my face a bunch in Time Spiral flashback drafts. So this is one of the build around me cards for blue-white flyers. It's a 3-mana 2/2 flyer. Great. Other creatures with flying get +0/+1. Very relevant. You oftentimes, as a downside to your flyers, is that they're smaller, right? You gain some evasion for some loss, and adding that extra toughness means they block that much better. Also, you can tap it and give other creatures you control with flying +1/+0. Card is really strong, especially in blue-white, just because that's the archetype. But I'm a huge fan of Sprite Noble. Even if you're not in blue, a 3-mana 2/2 flyer that gives some percentage of your creature's toughness, not bad. Supervine Touch, it cycles. That's how you should be reading this. I will bring this in if I see a ton of activated abilities, but even still, I would not recommend playing Stupefying Touch main deck. Much like Tidal Wave. Now, Tidal Wave can be a total blowout, right? The upside of Tidal Wave is, they attacked with their 4/4. I made a 5/5, blocked. Got him. The downside is, you left up 3 mana. They're like, I'll attack with 2 2/2s. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll, pay 3 mana and kill a 2/2. Or the worst case even still is, they have all flyers. And you're just like, ugh, this Tidal Wave is just sitting in my hand. I am not a fan of this style of effect. Mark my words, I'll get blown out by it, because that's the way this works, right? But Tidal Wave is one of those cards that you can justify playing a copy. I don't fault people for playing a copy. I'm just not a fan, personally. Nailed it. It is basically a blue neck snap. So Warden of Evil's Isle, if I recall correctly, was this an uncommon before? This is a great, again, I keep mentioning the blue-white flyers archetype, but I think it's up there as one of the better just archetypes in the format. Warden of Evil's Isle gets absurd in multiples, because the first one makes the second one cost 2 mana, and it makes your incidental flyers, your Shoreline Rangers cost less, right? Card is very strong, and card's pretty solid. I was a fan of it before, and if you get multiples, the fact it got downgraded to common is very important to keep in mind, and I think it's one of the build around me uncommons for blue-white. Wonder is stupid. So you can play Wonder, and I've seen it played with like reanimates, like, oh, now all my reanimated effects all have flying. But you just play Wonder, and if it ends up in the graveyard, great. Creatures you control have flying. That's bonkers. And if not, you play it as a 4-mana 2/2 flyer. It's not great, but you can always block with it, put it in the graveyard, and oh, look, all my creatures have flying. Wonder is actually pretty strong. I've always been impressed with it in limited formats, and I expect it to be great here too. On to black, and we begin with the block of text known as Animate Dead. It's at uncommon, and if you are in the reanimate strategy, this is the premier reanimate card for you. If you're like, I'm gonna go blue-black reanimate, right? And you first pick Inkwell Leviathan. Animate Dead is the card you slam. Just move it. Same thing with like World Gorger Dragon when we get to it, right? We'll talk about World Gorger Dragon when we get there. But Animate Dead is the premier reanimate spell. So if you are in that archetype, I would take it over most things, just because this effect is actually there's like 3 or 4 actual methods of reanimating, and this is just straight up the best one. So keep that in mind. I think the card is actually solid even if you're not in hard reanimate, just because you get the best creature in either graveyard. So it's enchant creature card in a graveyard. So even if you like kill their best creature, you can animate dead it. So keep that in mind. Annihilate. So 5 mana, destroy target non-black creature, can be regenerated, draw a card. As we see, there's another 5 mana removal spell. The colors are getting like some sort of cheap reanimate spell, or not cheap reanimate, cheap removal spells like passivism, and then you get your expensive ones. I think a copy of Annihilate is not a bad one. Again, non-black. That's a clause that will come up sometimes. You'll just be sad, but the effect is certainly very strong, and I'll play a copy or 2, probably not more than 2 in a deck. Blightsoil Druid. I don't like it. I mean, so it is a ramp elf, right? You pay 1 life, add a green, and that's what you want to be playing for. It's an elf. Its body is really bad in this format because there are so many 2 power, 2 toughness guys. So it's an elf. It's a mana elf. Now the question is a 2 mana mana elf bad? Well, as we've seen with cards like Leaf Gilder in Origins, right? It's not necessarily bad. It's not going to be spectacular. If it was a 2/1 and you paid 1 life to add green, I would think it's much stronger, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Okay. Now on to Blood Artist. Now, people recognize Blood Artist from, modern and standard aristocrats, right? The card was also an absolute house in Limited, because you just play Blood Artist, and over the course of the game, your opponent's forced to answer. If they don't, it'll like gain you 5 life and deal them 5 damage, because it's whenever it or another creature dies, irregardless of controller. Card is very strong, and probably not first pickable, but it's definitely, I think, like 3rd, 4th pickable. It's up there. It's very strong, and keeping it uncommon was very smart. Moving on to Braids Cabal Minion. So Braids is a smokestack on a 4-mana 2/2. Does the smokestack archetype exist? Now, we see a bunch of black cards that have these sort of self-sacrifice existing, right? Like, you'll see a whole bunch of them. There are cards that get effects for it. Braids rewards you very much if they don't have creatures to sack. If they don't have a creature to sacrifice and they're forced to sacrifice a land, there's not many artifacts in this format. If they're forced to sacrifice a land, you are so far ahead. Unless, of course, it's like turn 15, right? And, you're just sitting with Braids. It's a hard card to judge, because in some decks, it's just the greatest card you could possibly play, and sometimes you just sit with it in your hand. It's one of those cards that has a very wide range. Onto Cabal Therapy. So Cabal Therapy is a duress style effect. Again, you see this sort of sacrifice a creature theme that exists, and if, let's say, you know your opponent has, like, I don't know, they open 2 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor or whatever, right? In Legacy, right, Legacy Storm, for example, you play Cabal Therapy and name Force of Will, because that's the most demanding card. There's some skill in playing with Cabal Therapy, and at worst, it's 1 mana, sack a creature, make them discard a card, which, depending on the creature you sacrifice, if you have the right deck for it, is not that actually big of a loss. Do I think it's absurd? No, I think it's like middle of the pack. You might play 1 copy if you're happy. So Carrion Feeder is one of those cards that blows me out every time, because it just sits there and it's so innocuous, and then it just forces people to answer it, and it gets out of hand really quick. The fact you can't block, relevant, and I think if you're in the self-sacrifice out deck, Carrion Feeder is one of the better cards you want. You probably want 1 or 2 copies, but not much more than that. So I loved Deadbridge Shaman in Origins. I just loved it. It traded with all of the aggressive 2/2s and got you an extra card. And I think in this format, it's going to be equally as strong. As I said, there's a lot of 2/2s. There's not a lot of, like, 1/4s. Yes, I know there's Giant Turtle. Tortoise, whatever. But I expect Deadbridge Shaman to be a staple 3 mana spell in the black decks, and you're going to be happy to have not like 4 copies, but definitely like 2 to 3 copies is not an unreasonable number to play. Duress, it's okay. I sometimes have Duresses in my sideboards, depending on the matchup, but having it in a limited format is always great. Entomb, you definitely play Entomb if you're the Reanimate deck, and probably not if you're in anything else. Eyeblight's Ending is as close to unconditional as you're going to get. The elves that exist are almost all in green. There's a few black ones. So reading this as destroy target non-green creature, I'm quite content with that. Eyeblight's Ending is very strong. Definitely a top-tier removal spell. And I would be happy to snap this up early. Oh my god, Gravedigger! Ah! So what I felt about Eternal Masters is it felt so much like this draft format feels like it's like a whole bunch of core sets smushed together. Like we have Control Magic, we have Prodigal Pyromancer, which we've had other versions of Tim, and we have Gravedigger at common, and oh my god, do I love Gravedigger so much. So I'm biased. I love Gravedigger. When you have multiple Gravediggers, you can start chaining Gravediggers, and it's so much fun. There's some beautifulness. Man, English is hard tonight. Jesus. To chaining Gravediggers. And it's great in the self-sacrifice deck because there's, again, if you start chaining Gravediggers with like a Carrion Feeder, well, it's free counters. Very expensive, very slow. It is not for the formats that are fast. But as I said, this format does not look fast. Oh, Havoc Demon. Havoc Demon was no, it wasn't uncommon. I think. I can't remember if it was rare or uncommon. 7 mana, 5/5 flyer, and when it dies, all creatures get -5/-5. This card is a house once it's in play. Key thing is, you gotta be able to live long enough to get it into play. And sometimes let's say you're super far ahead. You're sitting with a 7 mana 5/5 flyer that you may not want to play, because if they kill it, it might plague when you're bored. And sometimes you're so far behind that you play it, and they're like, I don't care, I'll attack you with a whole bunch of creatures, and you're like, okay, well, I'll block and take 8 or something absurd like that, and it doesn't die. It's very slow. It doesn't seem bad in as another budget reanimate target. I mean, a 5/5 flyer. Good. I'm not crazy. It did used to be rare. Thank you, chat. Love you guys. Okay. So, Honden of Night's Reach is actually my favorite of the shrines. For these slow formats, or slower formats, Honden is just disgusting. It slowly just drains them of cards, forces them to play everything right away. Of course, eventually, once they're hellbent, it doesn't do anything. But it's the type of card that, like, if I'm in blue-black, like a blue-black control deck, Honden is one of those cards that I love. Now, I know I'm biased because in Legendary Cube, the first iteration, which was still pretty terrible, Honden's, like the blue and black Honden were pretty solid. Okay, the Hymn to Turok. This is one of those cards that you play it. If you play it on turn 2, you may just win the game. Because you just hit, like, their 2 lands. Because discard 2 cards at random. At random being the important part. Him is incredibly strong. If you're in black, I would probably take it very highly. Because it does just... It can just win you the game. And the effect is very strong. Like, you are getting a 2-for-1 of sorts, right? You are paying 2 mana and casting him and getting him to discard 2 cards. So, Hymn to Turok, very strong. And, I mean, it's even better in Cube, but it's still very strong. So, Icarid. So, it's a 4-mana, 3-1 haste. Okay, you know, you look at that and you're like, there's something wrong. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice it. Okay, that seems lame. But then at the beginning of your upkeep, if it's in your graveyard, you may exile a black creature card other than Icarid. If you do, return it to the battlefield. So, you know, obligatory Dredge reprint. I'm glad they did reprint it. And now, how is it in limited? It's okay. I mean, the more you are in black and the more black creatures you have, it can just be a very, very good grindy card to just slowly whittle away. If they ever have, like, let's say, for example, an 07 Glacial Wall, this card does nothing. Nothing. Doesn't seem unplayable. I would not, like, first pick it over, like, Swords to Plowshares or everything. I mean, I really shouldn't be comparing stuff to Swords to Plowshares because it's Swords to Plowshares. It's so good. Innocent Blood is great. So, each player sacrifices a creature for 1 black. Let's suppose you don't have a creature in play. Bam! 1 mana Edict. It's not, you know, Edicts aren't the greatest, but they're not bad. And then, as I said, it seems like there exists this self-sacrifice outlet, or engine. So it only gets better if you have ways to gain, or, like, stuff to gain from it. Okay. Lys Alana Scarblade. 3 mana, 1/1. It says discard an elf. Target creature gets -X/-X, where X is the number of elves. This goes in exactly 1 deck, and that is green-black elves. And even still, it's not like, the effect, if the cost was just tap, it'd be absurd. And discard an elf card is actually, like, a very high cost. You have to have all elves, period. And that's what I don't like about the elf deck in this limited format, as opposed to, like, Blue-White Skies, where you can just get to play good blue and white creatures and you just beat them with it. The elves deck needs a critical number of elves, and there's no guarantee that you get them. Malicious Affliction is actually quite strong in limited. It's not, like, amazing, but it in Cube I've been fairly impressed with it. It's black destroy target non-black creature, and if Morbid is triggered, if a creature died this turn, you get to copy it. So it can be double removal spell. Typically it's cast post combat, so you attack, they block, creature dies, and you just kill some stuff. That's not bad at all. I think the card is very strong. Definitely, you know, it's at rare for a reason, but it's certainly first pickable. So, Nausea, as I said, there's not a lot of X1s, so it's not great. You might pick up 1 copy for the board. Okay, so let's talk Necropotence, right? Oh, I thought there's a train going by. It scared me. Necropotence in Constructed and, like, Vintage, and, you know, was part of Combo Winter. Very strong. In Limited, it's not as good. In cube it can be. Like, it's cube. That's the difference. Where does Necro exist? Like, you need to be really heavy in black, and you are committing yourself pretty hard to ride the Necropotence train. Now, I think it's like playable? Question mark. I probably wouldn't first pick it with, like, if there's a good uncommon in it in the pack, but this is one of those cards I don't have much experience in anything outside of cube. And in cube, right, Necro, if you're in mono black, you can justify playing Necropotence, I think. Now Necrotal's great, just amazing. It's a 4 mana, kills something. I love Necrotal. I love Necrotal too much for my own good. I expect to take a fair number of Necrotals if I get the chance. Card's very strong. Well, Ice Age Limited is very different, I would argue, than this limited format. Night's Whisper, it's a Sign in Blood style effect. You cannot target an opponent with it. Keep that in mind. So you can't do the fun Sign in Blood you for the kill. Ha ha ha. But Night's Whisper with the Vraska dual deck art, it's the same art I use in Modern, is a solid card. I'm content playing it in Limited. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's amazing, but it's certainly, if you're in black, play at least one copy. Pick one up. Phyrexian Gargantua is a 6-mana 4/4 that has a Night's Whisper on it. Card is also very strong. It's uncommon for a reason. It is oftentimes, by the time you get around to casting Phyrexian Gargantua, you are down to 1 or 2 cards left in your hand. Like, it's turn 6, you've hit your land drops, you've played your early turn spells. Card is very strong and definitely a good top of the curve card. Just like Phyrexian Rager is a good middle of the curve card. 3 mana, 2/2, draws you a card. You lose a life? Okay. That is a fair rate. So, Phyrexian Rager, solid. I play 1 or 2 copies in most of my black decks. So, Plague Witch, keyword elf. Target creature gets -1/-1 at the cost of discarding a card. So this is one of those cards that seems very innocuous. If you're in the Reanimate deck, you probably want to pick up a copy of this. But as I said, not a lot of 1/1s. So Prowling Pangolin is either a 5-mana 6/5 or a double edict. It's when it's good, it's great. You paid 5 mana for a 6/5. When it's bad, it's really, really bad. Now, because they just sacrificed 2 tokens, right? Now, there doesn't exist many tokens in this format. Like, we already went over white, and we saw just raise the alarm. So I think Prowling Pangolin's actually not bad. I wouldn't play too many of them, but playing 1 copy is probably justifiable. This card will oftentimes be sideboarded out, but can be very good. So Sengir Autocrat. 4-mana 2/2 that puts 3 0/1 Serfs into play. It's at uncommon. Remember how I said there's this build around sacrificing theme? Sengir Autocrat is exactly what you want. Gives you lots of irrelevant dudes to sacrifice and get value from. And it's actually not a bad card altogether. Sinkhole, destroy target land. This will steal some percentage of games that it's played. And you just sinkhole them and watch them cry. Is the card amazing? I don't think it's amazing. Is it strong? Yes. Is the upside there? Yes. Will you play it in Limited? Probably. Is it first pickable over Necrotal or Swords to Plowshares? Probably not. I would take Fact or Fiction over it too. But it's certainly a high pickup, especially if you know you're in black. Skull King Ghost is very bad. Very, 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 very bad. there are lots of targets that exist. So even a 2-mana 2/1 flyer, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. White gets a 2-mana 2/1 flyer with no downside. Toxic Deluge is absurd. It's a wrath effect that, yes, you have to pay life for it, but Toxic Deluge is very, 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 very strong, and certainly a card that I would first pick. I love the card. I love Wraths, and Wraths in Limited that you can guide can be really strong. Tragic Slip is also great. Oftentimes it's not that hard to trigger Morbid in a limited format, and -13 says destroy target creature. Card is very strong. Very, 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 very strong. And certainly top up, definitely in consideration for top black common. Twisted Abomination, much like the blue one, Twisted Abomination is super solid. You get it early and it can swamp cycle to make sure you hit your land drops, and you get it late, and a 5/3 with Regenerate is actually pretty strong. So Urborg Uprising is very dirtily. However, returning 2 creatures from your graveyard to your hand and drawing a card in the sort of slow-ish formats that it looks like this format is, can be very good. It combos very well with cards like Innocent Blood, right? And late game, when both players are low cards in hand, and Urborg Uprising can win you the game because you drew 3 cards. So having 1 copy is not bad. But you notice that sort of thing, right? There's so many good playable cards that the power level of this format is going to be very good. So, Vampiric Tutor. Tutors in Limited are upper bounded by the quality of the cards you're fetching. Tutors in Cube, for example, very good. Depending on the cube, of course. Like, I'm talking like, let's say Legacy Cube, right? Or even, like, if you want to go as far and say, oh, a Powered Cube, right? Those cards, Tutors, are great because you have amazing cards to find. So having a second copy of it can be very strong. So take Vampiric Tutor in that vein. I still think it's very strong. I think the upside of a Vampiric Tutor is very good, and having a second copy is very relevant. I was just asked Rocks or Cone of Flame, and that's tough. I would take Rocks. Cone of Flame's great, but Rocks is just impossible to beat. Victimize is our next reanimate spell. Choose 2 creature cards in the graveyard, sack a creature, and then return them to the battlefield. It's no animate dead, but it's still very good. This is the other. Notice how the reanimate spells are at uncommon, right? So you need to take the reanimate spells highly. Do not expect them to wheel. And the card's actually not bad by itself, right? If you sack a Surf token and get 2 creatures back, very good. So, Victimize by itself is already a good card. Visara. So, Visara the Dreadful. Great in black. Great in Reanimator. Great in all the things. Card's stupid, mega, ultra bonkers, and is very strong. You have to commit to being heavy black, but that's not necessarily a downside if you pick it up early in a draft. Wake of Vultures. 4 mana, 3/1 flyer. As I said, there's a lot of 2/2 flyers. And then sack a creature, regenerate it. It's okay. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. And the last black card we have, Wake Dancer. This card was pretty subpar in Dark Ascension, but there's enough self-sacrifice that I think you might want to pick up Wake Dancer 8th through 10th pick, probably. Like, I don't think it belongs much higher than there, even if you're in the black-red self-sack deck. Okay, on to red. Avarax. 5 mana, 3/3 haste. Okay, that's aggressive. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a card name, Avarax, reveal it, and put it in your hand, and has 1 in a red, fire breathing. This thing lives in its in an interesting spot, right? So, at 5 mana, you don't want to play too many 5-drops. But this is a card that rewards you to have as many, well, not as many as you can, but definitely like 2 to 4 copies of it. A 3/3 is actually not bad size-wise in this format, but I want to say that it's not that good. I just want to say it, right? Because if you play the second one, right, you can't fire breathe the first one when you play it. So keep that in mind. Or if you want to attack with both. Battle Squadron. So it noted the tokens that exist, oddly enough, don't exist in white. They exist mostly in red. So Battle Squadron is one of those cards that, if you have the support for it, is really good. You want to have, right? So it's at worst a 5 mana 1/1 flyer. But if you're able to make it a 3/3 is fair, and 4/4 or 5/5 is absurd. So you have to have tokens for it. Now, there exists in red. Cough, cough, there's Beetleback Chief right there. So Battle Squadron is one of those cards that if in the right deck, is the best card in your deck. And in the wrong deck, it's just terrible. Beetleback Chief is great. It's 4 mana for 4 power, distributed among 3 creatures. The 1/1s are oftentimes going to be irrelevant if you don't have something to deal with them, just because, as I said, there's a lot of 2/2 or 2 mana 2/2s. But it's the exact type of card that you want in this token deck. The red-white Rally the Ancestors. Not Rally the Ancestors. Rally the Peasants deck. There we go. Getting my rallies confused. We need to go to a Bernie rally next. Oh, topical humor. It's great. Borderland Marauder in the core set that I was in. Core set, right? Card was very strong. 2 mana. Attacks as a 3/2. Very aggressive. Play this in your aggressive decks. It beats face really hard. It'll trade a lot. As I said, there's a lot of 2-power creatures running around. Yes. Burning Vengeance. My favorite archetype to draft in Innistrad. I love the archetype. It is the build around. Thank you, High Chief. It is the build around for blue-red. And it's almost exclusively blue-red spells. Do I think the archetype exists in this format? I think the archetype is really bad in this format. A lot of the staple cards, it's so close. It's so close. Now, if you pick up, 2 copies of Burning Vengeance or 3 copies of Burning Vengeance, then you might be able to make it work. But it's an uncommon. You can't expect it. I don't want to say that the Burning Vengeance archetype is bad, but I think it's, you need to get lucky to have a good Burning Vengeance deck, from what I've seen in this format. And I feel sad saying that. I feel really sad. Carbonize, great. 3 mana Lightning Bolt, still will play it. Chain Lightning, 1 mana Sorcery Speed Lightning Bolt. Take it, super good. Both Carbonize and Chain Lightning are great. Crater Hellion at rare, also very, very stupid card. You play Crater Hellion and you just wreck people. Card is incredibly strong rare and is amazing and definitely can be first pickable. Desperate Ravings. Hey, look, we start with our flashback spells. Desperate Ravings, when you first cast it, is net card parity because you played the Desperate Ravings, so you draw 2 cards and pseudo put 2 cards in your graveyard. So you have to flash it back to get +1 card. Goes in the Burning Vengeance deck, and maybe if you're just in a regular blue-red deck, you want 1 copy. Dragon Egg. Downgraded from uncommon. So if it ever dies, having a 2/2 flyer with fire breathing is very good. This is the type of card. Hey, look! Remember how I mentioned the black sacrifice deck? It's a black-red sacrifice deck. You have cards like Dragon Egg to make the most out of you sacking your guys. You have the red tokens made by Beetleback Chief to sack, and having it once you get the token in play, it's very good. Ugh. Okay, Dualcaster Mage. You can do sweet things with Dualcaster Mage, like counter their counter spell with a copy of it. Card's okay. It's not amazing. It can do some sweet things, and it can do nothing. I'm not like a huge fan of it, but I think the card has potential to be great. Faithless Looting, much like Desperate Ravings, when you initially cast it, it's actually card disadvantage, and when you flash it back, it's card parity. So basically just card quality. You play this in Burning Vengeance. Fervent Cathar, the red aggro deck wants it. It's 3 mana, 2/1 with haste, and when it enters the battlefield, you can make a creature unable to block. The 1 toughness is actually relevant, and it's okay. I wouldn't play every copy, but maybe having 1 copy in an aggressive red deck is okay. Firebolt is great. You should play it in every red deck, not just the Burning Vengeance deck. Flame Jab is less good, just as I said, not many X1s, but the card is still can be very strong. And this is one of those cards that you want with Burning Vengeance, because it combined with Burning Vengeance can kill 3 toughness creatures. Gasp! I know, I did math. So Gamble's one of those cards that if you have something absurd, you may want to play it. Again, it's that risky tutor, but I think it's not bad. Key2 Slinger is great. 3 mana, 2/2. That shocks something when it comes into play. Yes, you need to pay Echo, but it's oftentimes worth it. I love the art for this too, by the way. Okay, so I've had many discussions with people about Honden of Infinite Rage. So, it at worst pings something every turn. That is not bad. It might be good enough, I think, to just play in every red deck. I think it's like really close. It's really, really, really close. So I just have to play with this format. Like, don't play 5-color Hondens, but if you're in red, maybe pick up a Honden of Infinite Rage. Keldon Champion, very strong card. Again, you see now that there exists an aggressive red deck. Keldon Champion, downgraded from rare. 4 mana, 3/2 haste, and it has Echo. But when it comes into play, it lightning bolts a player. With, as you can say, it's lava spike or whatever. Card is very strong. It'll trade a lot, but the thing is, like, people don't want to trade with it the first time it comes into play because you're like, oh, I didn't pay Echo with it. I just straight up got to play it and attack. So you can do work with Keldon Champion. Same with Keldon Marauders. So Keldon Marauders on turn 2 is such a beating. So it comes into play, pings a player, and then during your next turn you attack with it. It's a 2 mana 3/3. So almost surely they don't have anything that wants to block it. And then if they have a 3/2, they don't want to block it because next turn it goes away anyway. So this is if you play this on turn 2, it's as close to a turn 2 Lava Axe as you're going to get, which in an aggressive deck is superb for a 2 mana investment. Curd Ape, if you're in red-green, you should probably play it. If you're not, you should probably not. Don't play too many copies of Curd Ape. Remember, this is not constructed, but a 1 mana 2/3, pretty solid. The question is, how often are you going to get, both red and green? Mog Fanatic is okay. It's worse now that damage doesn't use the stack because it can't kill X2s. And it's just a 1/1, but it's not the end of the world. It's like playable. Mog War Marshal, again, red-white tokens if you're going wide, but it's even just like a solid creature by itself. If you have a 3-drop you want to play, you don't pay Echo. You got 2 1/1s. So Raise the Alarm. I'm starting to rescind my previous Raise the Alarm now that I see all these good red cards. Orcish Oriflamme. I butchered it. It's probably Oriflame or whatever. I don't speak the English well. Attacking creatures you control get +1/+0. If you're going wide, pick up a copy. If not, probably shouldn't. Not a lot of non-basics, so Price of Progress isn't great. But if you see someone who's gone 5-color Hondens because they took all the lands, but there's only like 12 or 13 non-basics, so probably shouldn't pick this up early. Unless, of course, you need copies for Legacy Burn. Pyroblast, strict sideboard. Pyrokinesis is absurd. So, exiling a red card, you don't feel good when you do it, but sometimes you just have to. But dealing 4 damage divided as you choose among creatures is very good. Very, 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 very good. Very strong, oftentimes 2 or 3 for 1, and I'm always impressed with Pyrokinesis. If you're an aggressive deck, Reckless Charge is exactly what you want. You get to 1, play it early, and 2, punch it in for late damage. Rorik's Blade Ring. Oh my god, I'm getting tired. I've been recording for an hour and a half. We're a little bit more than halfway there. Rorik's is great. 6/5 flyer. It is the king in the air, and if you're in red, just slam it and be happy. Seismic Stomp, we've seen these effects so many times in Limited now. Hopefully you guys know, maybe having 1 copy in an aggressive red deck isn't the worst in the world. Siege Gang Commander, bonkers rare. Just absolutely nutty, stupid, first pickable, easy. Card is absurd. Absurd. Sneak Attack, people tend to pick up for value purposes. I would be the type of person that would pick it up early and then try and build around it, but I'm not sure if that exists. I would try it, and if you pick it up first pick, you can do sweet things with it. Sting Scourger is very strong. For 1, great in the black-red sack deck because you don't have to pay Echo. It's a 2/2 that can unsummon a creature. It's like a Mana War, except you have to pay a total of 6 mana for it. Okay, so it's a worse Mana War. Sulfuric Vortex, if you're in the red aggro deck, just slam this card. This is the type of card that in Cube, I open and I say, bam, mono red, done. And this is the format where the red cards that exist can really support Sulfuric Vortex. So if I open Sulfuric Vortex, I would debate going, okay, slam, mono red, done. It's that good. Tooth and Claw, as you see, this is another uncommon sacrifice creatures. Cough, cough, black, red, sack deck. You sack 2 creatures, you get a 3/1. Now, a 3/1 isn't great in this format. As I said, lots of 2/2s, and there's a fair number of 1/1s. So this is not the sacrifice effect you necessarily want. You'll certainly pick it up if you need it, but it's not amazing. Undying Rage, it gives a creature +2/+2, can't block, and when it's put into a graveyard, you return it to its hand. This effect is very strong. We'll get to Rancor later, but Undying Rage is very good in an aggressive deck. You just put it on a 1/1, you make it a 3/3, you just smash every turn. You don't care. If your creature dies, you get it back. That recursion is a source of card advantage that can really reward you. Now there are pacifism style effects in this format, right? So that kind of sucks. But if you are able to get a copy of Undying Rage going, it feels so dirty. Wildfire Emissary, I'll play 1 copy in every red deck, and if I'm against white, I will sideboard in another one. The fact it has 4 toughness is huge in this format. Not many 4 power ground guys exist, and it has Pseudo Fire Breathing and Pro White. So white decks are so sad when they see this card. Okay. World Gorger Dragon. Let's get something clear. If you have World Gorger Dragon and Animate Dead, you have infinite mana and infinite enter the battlefield triggers. I will implore my viewers to just Google World Gorger Dragon Animate Dead, because it's already past midnight and I'm tired. I don't want to explain it. It's not a hard one, but So you can combo World Gorger Dragon with Gitu Singer in play, or just get a bunch of mana. World Gorger Dragon is incredibly dangerous to play in Limited, because if they kill it with the first trigger on the stack, you exile all permanents you control and not get them back. So if your opponent showed you a Swords to Plowshares and they have white up, be scared. Now, of course, if you play it and they're tapped out and you just have you are saying, I have a 6 mana, 7/7 flying with trample. Can you beat it? Now, if they put a pacifism on it, you're sad. This is one of the riskiest cards you can play in Limited. But the upside is it kills people really quick. And Young Pyromancer. I played a lot of Young Pyromancers in Limited, and every time it was so sweet. It's best in blue-red, obviously, but it's also just a welcomed reprint. On to green. Abundant Growth. When it was first spoiled, people thought it was pretty mediocre. I believe it was Avacyn Restored. I think it was Avacyn Restored. Card is okay. It cycles and is fixing. That's fair. If you're in green, you can probably play a copy and get away with it. Ancestral Mask. So this is one of those cards that the green-white enchantment deck exists. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment on the battlefield. This effect can be very strong. Remember, the risky part of playing all these enchantments is bounce spells, especially since there exists Silent Departure and Mana War, both at common. So you got to be wary. However, this card on a random flyer giving it's at worst +2/+2, but giving 6/6 is just such a beating. Argothian Enchantress is a reason to go into the green-white enchantment deck. Remember, this has Shroud, so you cannot enchant it, but there are a fair number of good enchantments that are running around. So Argothian Enchantress, not amazing in Limited, but certainly build around me. Brawn is great. So it's a 4 mana 3/3 with trample. So already that rate, it's a hill giant with trample. Pretty solid. And if it's in your graveyard and you have a forest, creatures you control have trample. Sweet. It's not as good as Wonder, but Brawn beats people. Center Chieftain. It's 4 mana 3/3 haste. Okay. Not amazing. But if you have a threshold, it gets creatures you control get +1/+1 and trample. I'm curious to see where this sits. I think this is like a black-green card. Or like it'll perform best in black-green, but it might be just okay. Like Threshold isn't that hard to get. Or at least it didn't used to be that hard. Now, how it's gonna be here? It might be non-trivial, but I think it's like a playable card. And I'll be like, let's get started. It's a hill giant with haste. That rate is solid to play by itself. So, Civic Wayfinder is absurd. Play this card, please. It's a 3 mana 2/2. Okay, it's a 2/2 for 3, so not the greatest rate, but you get a basic land and put it in your hand. It draws you mana fixing. Card is great. I love it. Civic Wayfinder has been printed a few times, and every time I'm just super happy. Commune with the Gods is if you have good creatures or enchantments to find, it's okay. Put them into your graveyard so it triggers Threshold, but it's not amazing. Next comes Elephant Guide. Now, I loved Griffin Guide, and I love Elephant Guide. I think Elephant Guide is incredibly strong. Slapping it onto like +3/+3 for 3 mana is an okay rate, and when it dies, you get a 3/3. Cool. Bad against pacifism, bad against bounce spells, but I can just say that about all enchantments, right? Elvish Vanguard. If you are in Elves, this is one card you want as many copies of, because it just gets better in multiples. You need to put 2 counters on it for it to be great, because otherwise it's just a 2 mana 2/2, and there's so many bears in this format. Emperor Crocodile, downgraded from rare. It's a 4 mana 5/5. When you control no other creatures, sacrifice it. Well, If you go 2-drop, 3-drop Crocodile, your opponent is oh so sad. Emperor Crocodile is very good. It's the Imperiosaur of this format, and it can kill people really quick. Really, really, really quick. Beware the Croco. Flint of Boar. Well, if you're in green-red, this card is amazing. It's a 3/3 with haste, basically. We already saw this with like Curdape, right? But the green-red zoo-ish deck exists. And if you're in green-red, this card is great. If you're not in green-red, don't play it. I don't like Fogs in Limited, moving on. I don't like Gaia's Blessing in Limited. It cycles, so it's, if you need to play a green card, it cycles. Green Sun Zenith is actually pretty decent in this format. Now, you're not going to be fetching up Crater Hoofs or anything, but Green Sun Zenith is basically a tutor for a creature, and it shuffles back into your deck. So if you draw it early, it's great. If you draw it late, it's great. So Green Sun Zenith, very strong in Limited. Harmonize is amazing. Like, I don't have to say much. It's very, very, very good. 4 mana, draw 3 cards. Great. Glad it's an uncommon. Heritage Druid upped to a rare. And you're not going to be playing combo elves that much in this limited format. But if you are in elves, or you want to pick up a rare that's worth some money, you can get it. It's not great. Honden of Life's Web, pretty bad. It's the worst of the Hondens by far, and I wouldn't play it. Imperious Perfect. This is one of the reasons to go into elves. This card is an absolute bomb with every elf you get, and this is a reason to go into it. Invigorate is pretty decent, actually. A free +4/+4 is very good. Think of it like a free Giant Growth. I will happily have my opponent gain 3 life if I get to attack and kill a creature. And the fact is, if you appear tapped out, the effect is very strong. Invigorate is one of those, like, I love Giant Growth because it's so cheap for what it does, and I love Invigorate for what it does too. Land of War Elves is great in Limited. I don't need to say much. Lys Alana Huntmaster. Another build around me. Whenever you cast an elf, you put another elf into play. Again, you need a critical number, and this does help you go wide. There's not a lot of good things to natural order in this format, just an FYI. So there's not that many huge green creatures running around. Nature's Claim sideboard. Nimble Mongoose, pretty bad actually. Like, getting Threshold to make this relevant is harder. Like, by the time turn 4 rolls around, you're closer, but Nimble Mongoose is too slow. Rancor is absurd. I will play it in every green deck and crush everybody with it, because, oh my god, Rancor is busted. Rancor is just actually busted. Play it a whole bunch, crush people, make them cry. Regal Force is the closest thing you have to a natural order target, so if you opened a green mythic and a green rare, congratulations. I personally love Roar of the Worm. I think the card, like, 7 mana for 6/6 is but if you ever, like, if you get it in your graveyard and flash it back, the rate is strong. Now, I'm trying to be unbiased because Roar is one of my pet cards, but I think the card is still good. Roots is pretty good, actually. It taps, it keeps a creature. It's a claustrophobia for non-flyers, which, not bad. Seal of Strength, not that good. Giant Growth is great because you get to hide it. Seal of Strength, you put into play and your opponent's like, ugh. Well, they might have to eventually run into it, but I don't like Seal of Strength. I would much rather have it be Giant Growth. Yes, you have to leave up 1 green mana then, but 1 mana is such a low cheap effect. Now, this is an enchantment, so that's why it's here instead of Giant Growth. Sentinel Spider is, or at least it was, absurd. A 4 mana 4/4 with Vigilance and Reach. And I expect this card to be also quite good. It's just huge. You don't want to play too many copies, but I played 2 copies in a green deck. It's great. Hey, look, another rare, giant, stupid. Sylvos is just a bomb rare if you're in green. Take it and move on. Sylvan Library. Much better with shuffle effects. Definitely incredibly strong in cube. And I'm not sure where it belongs in this limited format, though I expect Sylvan Library, the effect is pretty solid. Sylvan Might's okay. Not amazing, just okay. Don't play too many copies. Thornwalled Archer is as close to Green Doomblade as you're going to get. I would play 2 to 3 copies of it. It's just probably the best 2-drop in the format for green. So if you're in Elves, if you were in Elves, Timberwatch Elf is the build around me. In case you haven't noticed, all of the incredibly strong build arounds are uncommon. So you have to keep that in mind when you're trying to build around. Timberwatch Elf is absurd, and it is a reason to go into Elves. I mentioned the rare one, and this one's just as good. Like, target creature gain +X, where it's X number of the elves on the battlefield, just bonkers. Werebear is fine. It taps for green, and doesn't have the right to bear arms. If you are in Elves, Wirewood Symbiote is nuts, because it says your elves can't die, you can untap elves, and there's some elves that have some pretty strong... Like, if you're in Elves, Wirewood Symbiote is absurd, and you should just slam it. To point out, it's not an elf, so you don't want to pick up, like, 8 copies of it and have, like, 5 elves, right? Scented Swarm, printed for legacy reprint reasons. And Yavimaya Enchantress. If you are in the green-white enchantment deck, this card is oftentimes a 3-mana 4/4, or 3-mana 5/5, which that rate is very good. Onto multicolored, and I am starting to get some terrible, terrible stomach aches, so I'm going to go through these pretty quick. So, Ariello Cloak, insane. Belfastrix, great. I'm just assuming you're in these 2 colors. Bloodbraid Elf, great. Brago, very strong. Dak, great. Extract from Darkness, this is your last uncommon reanimate spell. If you're in blue-black reanimate, great. If not, it's okay, not great. Flamekin Zealot, red-white aggro, yes, great. Glare of Subdual, green-white. Green-white doesn't have the most tokens, but if you're in green-white like Elves, this card's absurd. Yes, I know green-white isn't good for Elves. Goblin Trenches bumped back up to rare from uncommon and Vintage Masters. Card is very good. Great way to go wide. It is incredibly strong. Maelstrom Wanderer. If you ever cast this, you win the game. You'll be hard pressed to lose the game if you cast Maelstrom Wanderer. 3-color. It's probably too greedy. You don't want to reanimate it, because if you reanimate it, you don't get the cascade spell, the cascade effect. It's probably too expensive for limited, but I would try and make it work. If you're in green-black elves, Shaman of the Pack is absurd, obviously. Charlotte's Agent, also very good, just straight up 2 for 1. Sphinx of Steel Wind. Oftentimes you're not going to be casting it, though. I mean, 8 mana is a lot. Oftentimes you're going to be drafting this card. It is a mythic, with Reanimator in mind. Thunderclap Wyvern, absurd in blue-white. Just absurd. Trigon Predator is fine. There are a lot of enchantments and does host some people. Vindicate, absurd. It's just destroy target permanent. Great. Void. Someone just showed up and I have a stomach ache, which is why I'm going very fast. I was going slower earlier, but I'm feeling very ill right now. Void is actually pretty strong, but oftentimes you just use it as a straight up 1-for-1. You can hit it on natural order if you hit 2 mythics. This card is not green. You can't natural order Sphinx of Steel Wind. Oh, you can get Maelstrom Wanderer, but you still also don't get the Cascade. Cascade's only when you cast it, not when it comes into play. Cascade says, when you cast this card, exile cards from the top of your library. Oh, okay. Twitch Chat has it. We Dragonauts, if you're in the blue-red spells deck, very strong. Zealous Persecution's not as good just because there's not a lot of 1/1s. However, the card is still absurd because your team gained +1/+1 and their team gained -1/-1. Crushes people. This is your perfect top end for blue-red. Lots of people hate playing Call of Skybreaker. I think the card is great if you're as a top of the curve spell. Deathrite Shaman's okay, though you'll never be using this first ability, really, only in obscure corner cases. It's mostly reprinted for value reasons, but it's not a bad one to offer some late game utility. Giant Solafuge is a card lots of people love. This probably belongs in just the green-red aggro zoo deck. This is where it belongs, but you won't get multiple copies. It's a rare. And Torrent of Souls is your last major removal spell, or reanimate spell rather, and you can just kill people really quick. But this is basically your last uncommon reanimate spell. So you see there are 4 of them total. Artifacts. Astronaut's Altar. Great in EDH. Not so great in Limited. Unless, of course, you're in black. You want to ramp out something huge. I'm not even sure what you'd get. Chromox. Mostly printed for value reasons. I'm not a fan of it in this format. Duplicant is great, played in every deck, easily first pickable just because you get to play it in every deck. It's a 2/4 that kills a creature when it comes into play and copies it. It's great. I'm not a fan of MSC Tome. Super expensive to use. If you're incredibly desperate for a way to discard a card, maybe, but I just think this card's unplayable. Belcher is a card that I've played in Limited before, and it was stupid absurd. Best in red, of course, but Goblin Char Belcher can really just crush people. The possible upside of it is very strong, and it's certainly a card I would definitely play. Maybe not first pickable over Fact or Fiction, but definitely second to fourth pickable. If you get an Isochron Scepter, pick a counterspell. Watch your opponents cry themselves. They'll just cry. You Isochron Scepter, counterspell, GG. He's the Juggernaut Biscuit. I love the Juggernaut. I think the card is incredibly strong, and it beats really hard. As I said, there's a lot of 2/2s. Turns out 5/3s are very good against 2/2s. Mana Crypt. You should probably play Mana Crypt in Limited. Just saying. Fast mana seems strong. Milliken, very good. Good thing it's in paper because it's bugged on Magic Online. Basically, it's a 2 mana ramp spell or ramp creature. Great. Mindless Automaton is pretty bad. I've not been impressed with it. Neverill's Disc, very, very, very good. It's a Wrath on an artifact. Yeah, you have a delay on it, but oftentimes by the time you play it, people are not able to change their game plan too much. Pilgrim's Eye is great. 3 mana 1/1 flyer and gets a basic land. It's just like Civic Wayfinder, except it's on a 1/1 flyer, and that seems great. Pilgrim's Eye is very strong. Prismatic Lens, move to uncommon. Also, very good card. 2 mana, ramps you, and fixes. Great. Relic of Progenitus, probably a sideboard most of the time, but against the reanimate deck, it's bonkers. Yes, Sensei's Dividing Top. There are not many shuffle effects in this format. This card gets absurd with shuffle effects, but it's less good in this limited format. Ticking Gnomes, 3 mana 3/3, which this rate is actually very, very, very efficient for this format. Again, if it was a 3/4, it'd be absurd, just because there's so many 3/3s. There's a ton of 3/3s as well. 3/3 with Echo 3, and you sacrifice to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. It's okay. You'll play it. People are going to learn about the wonders of Winter Orb in Limited. I should just link to my Winter Orb deck so people get a feel for it. Winter Orb is one of those cards that it says fun. No. We don't get to have fun. the important thing is you have to be able to break parity with Winter Orb. So if you're ahead and your opponent's tapped out, like anytime your opponent taps out and you play Winter Orb, you're probably like the game slows down, but it's stupid. This card's great. You have to build appropriately for it. And Warm Power Stone is absurd. Slam this card in basically every draft. We get all of the Gain a Life lands from Khans of Tarkir, which are all great. I mean, if you're in those colors, they're free fixing. Caracas, not that many legendaries running around, but money, cha-ching, cha-ching. Mazavith is absurd. Just straight up bomb rare. Mishra's Factory, also pretty strong. If you've played with Mutavault in Limited, you know how strong it can be. So if you can afford to pay, like, sacrifice Colored Source, it's definitely worth playing. More Gain lands and Wasteland. Well, Wasteland isn't great at killing up too many of these lands. It does deal with Mazavith. You pick it up because of money. Okay, I apologize for the end of this being really fast, but I'm feeling incredibly ill to my stomach, so I won't be drafting today. I hope you guys enjoyed the set review. It'll be uploaded on YouTube. Thank you guys all for watching. I'll be back tomorrow for more actual Magic gameplay, and I'll see you guys then. Good night.